Hi, I'm Marnie Schmidt, and I'm a real believer in operational excellence and quality. My mission is to help people like you build quality systems that not only improve quality, but your customers' experience for real, so that you'll be a believer too. In this series, I break down ISO 9001 line by line. I've got it broken into manageable pieces so that if you're building a quality system or improving your existing quality system, or maybe you're doing internal audits and you want to understand the requirements better, we're going to break it down, translate it, and interpret it for you so that you can make more effective use of the standard. In each video, I start by giving you one good reason to trust me. And today's reason is I have been in so many different industries. I've worked in the automotive industry. I've worked with all kinds of different manufacturers. Plating, painting, steel, plastic, thermoplastic extrusion, powder coating, e-coating, injection molding, blow molding, like all different kinds of manufacturing environments. And I know how a quality system and the requirements of ISO 9001 can apply to any of them. So let's jump right in. I'm going to start right at the beginning of the standard. The previous video was just the introduction. Now we're going to be getting into the requirements. The most important part of this is all of element 4, but we've got to slog through some of the intro statements just to sort of set the table and give you some context about the scope of the ISO 9001 requirements. This international standard specifies requirements for a quality management system when an organization A needs to demonstrate its ability to consistently provide products and services that meet customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, and B aims to enhance customer satisfaction through the effective application of the system, including processes for improvement of the system and the assurance of conformity to customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. So it's just saying, when does this apply? Well, if your business is one who needs to demonstrate your ability to consistently provide products and services that conform, and if you are a business that aims to enhance customer satisfaction by making sure that your products and services conform. So it's kind of like, who might this apply to? If that sounds like you, this can apply to you. And then there's one more sentence and a couple of notes. All the requirements of this international standard are generic and are intended to be applicable to any organization, regardless of its type or size or the products and services it provides. I can tell you from experience that this is the case. I think the most interesting example that I've ever heard of ISO 9001 in application is there is a Buddhist temple that actually adopted all of the requirements in ISO 9001 because they wanted to have a legitimate management system for their nonprofit organization. And they wanted to make sure that they had sound business principles implemented and working for them. So that's just fascinating to me. So it can really apply to anything. It doesn't have to be a manufacturing business. It can apply to services. I've also worked in transportation, trucking, third-party logistics, warehousing. It can apply to that, certainly. I've worked with transactional businesses that really just do processing of orders. It can apply to that. It can apply to anything, right? Whether you're making donuts, it doesn't matter. This can definitely apply. And here's a couple of notes. Note 1, in this international standard, the term product or service only apply to products and services intended for or required by a customer. So your requirements throughout the standard for anything that you might be building for yourself or for use internally, it doesn't apply to that. If you're going to build yourself a riser that you're going to put a piece of equipment on, unless it is going to a customer, you needn't apply all of these requirements all the time. That's all it's saying. Second note, statutory and regulatory requirements can be expressed as legal requirements. So it's just kind of putting that whole big net. We might mean statutory, regulatory, legal should be included in that, obviously. So let's just keep going. There's section 2, normative references. So it's just kind of setting the table and doing some housekeeping here to make sure everybody understands. The following documents, in whole or in part, are normatively referenced in this document and are indispensable for its application. For dated reference, only the edition cited applies. For undated references, the latest edition of the reference document, including any amendment, applies. So, I mean, that's kind of a duh, of course. If they refer to something, if they refer to ISO 9000 2015, for example, they mean only the 2015 version is what applies. If they don't put a date on it, they assume that you move to the most recent revision of it. No big deal. Let's move on. Element 3, terms and definitions. For the purposes of this document, the terms and definitions given in ISO 9000 2015 apply. So it's telling you if you need a hint for any terms or definitions that you don't understand, get the ISO 9000 2015 version and you can look things up. I encourage you to get both the ISO 9000 standard and the 9004 standard as reference materials also at iso.org. You can just log on and go grab your own copy. I can't share the copies with you because that would be a copyright violation, so go and get your own. And follow along with me because it's really important that we understand and stay on the same page together. All right, let's jump right into element 4, context of the organization. So if you're building a system from scratch, or if you're improving your system, or if you are doing an internal audit of this particular requirement, let's just talk about what context means. This section, 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3, are going to talk about making sure that your organization understands where it is in this world and why it's here and what it's intending to do. So the expectation, the requirement, is that you are going to do an exercise where you're going to figure that out for yourself about your organization. So let's jump into the requirements. 4.1, the organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and its strategic direction and that affect its ability to achieve the intended results of its quality management system. Okay, this is the first of all kinds of run-on sentences, but if we'll just stop, take it word for word, and just break it down. The organization, that's me, that's you. The organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose, my purpose, your purpose, and strategic direction, my strategic direction, your strategic direction, and that affect its ability to achieve the intended results of its management system. Okay, so we have to do some sort of activity where we determine the external issues and the internal issues that are relevant to our purpose and strategic direction, and that might affect our ability to achieve the intended results. What are the intended results? Products and services. That's why we're going to have a quality system. So it's just kind of getting our head space correct about what is our organization here to do, what kind of a management system do we need, how are we going to run our business. And there's some notes here to help you think that through. Note 1, issues can include positive and negative factors or conditions for consideration. So it's saying, okay, first, while you're figuring out those things that might impact you, external and internal issues, don't forget to consider both internal and external, positive and negative. Make sure you think that through. Note 2 says understanding the external context can be, so it's going to give you some ideas here, facilitated by considering issues arising from legal, technological, competitive, market, cultural, social, and economic environments, whether international, national, regional, or local. So it's telling you, all right, while you're thinking about these internal and external issues that could impact your ability to function as a business, here's some thoughts. Remember, these are notes, they're not requirements, so that doesn't mean you have to go through and do each of these things, but it is making a suggestion so that it can help you along. This standard will never tell you how to do anything, it just kind of tells you what you need to do to be compliant. And the third note is talking about internal issues. Understanding the internal context can be facilitated by considering issues related to values, culture, knowledge, and performance of the organization. So while you're doing that, you're trying to figure out what your context is, what your internal and external issues might be. It's giving you a whole list of stuff that you might want to think about. Now that we've read through all of that, it doesn't tell you how to do anything. It just tells you what you need to do. What do you think might be a good way to achieve all of that stuff that it just told us that we needed to do? You're right. How about a SWOT analysis? Old tool. Easy to use tool. SWOT analysis, S-W-O-T. Strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. So you just make yourself a little list in a box and you say strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and you go back through that list that they just gave us. Okay, well, what might be a strength? What might be a weakness? What might be an opportunity? So, that's going to grab the positive things that might impact my ability to function as a business. It's the easiest way to just get there. It's really easy. You can do it in strategic planning. You should do it. We're talking about this ISO 9000 business, and a lot of people want to boil it down to, that's the quality department. That's the quality management system. It's really not. It's not only that, it's about how you should run your business. So we're still using that word quality management. I hope in the next version of ISO 9001 that they just drop it and say management system. I know they have to talk about quality because it's about achieving the intended results and making products and services the way they're supposed to be made. But when we put that Q word in there, quality, everybody's like, oh, that's not me. No, that must be some other person, not me. It's everybody. It's everybody. So let's just make sure we understand that. Okay. So now we've got our context. We've done our little SWOT analysis, our strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. The next thing is, remember that it says we have to review and monitor this over time. So it'd be a real good thing to just have it and we can just pull it out once a year. Yep, those are still our strengths and weaknesses. Oh, we've got new opportunities. Oh, we've got new threats. Things are changing. So you just review and keep it alive and just keep working with it. Once we've got that sort of considered, then we have to talk about the needs and expectations of interested parties. So now we know what might affect us. Now we need to talk about who cares. Who cares about this quality system? Who's it affected? So 4.2, let's jump right into those requirements about interested parties. Due to their effect or potential effect on the organization's ability to consistently provide products and services that meet customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, the organization shall determine. Okay, took 3 lines to say it. You're following along with me in the standard, right? What did it just say? It's a lot of words. What did it just say? It's saying, due to their effect or potential effect on our ability to consistently provide products and services. So, okay, who's going to maybe get in my way of providing products and services that meet all of my customers' requirements and all other requirements, statutory, regulatory, legal, blah, 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 shall determine. I have to determine these 2 things. Letter A, the interested parties that are relevant to the quality management system, so who is relevant to this, and B, the requirements of these interested parties that are relevant to the quality management system. So not only who they are, but then what are their needs or requirements. So we got to just determine those 2 things. So let's figure out who's interested. Well, my employees are interested. My suppliers are interested. My customers are interested. Regulators might be interested. My community might be interested. My neighbors. So you kind of go through, make a whole list, and then figure out what are their needs. Your neighbors don't want to have too much noise. Your community doesn't want to have pollution. Your customers want their products and services. Your location might be interested to make sure if you've got trucking that you're obeying all of the laws and regulations of the roads. So it's just making that list, who cares and what do they care about, and making sure that you know this. Again, are we talking quality yet? Is this something a quality manager sits around and thinks about? No, this is something that top management should think about. The executive team might think about. Like, we're talking about setting up our business here. If you're already down the pike and you're just kind of having another look at your quality system, that's fine. Make sure that you've had the good sense to consider that and make sure that your management system applies to that stuff, why your business exists. And again, we're not in the quality stuff. We're not in quality control. We're not inspecting anything. It's not about any of that traditional quality junk. This is about managing a business and making sure you end up with good products and services and delighted customers. So let's keep moving on. We've got to understand our internal and external issues. We've got to know our interested parties, and we got to figure out who they are. And again, the requirement is the organization shall monitor and review information about these interested parties and their relevant requirements. So I told you to make a list. I would make a list, figure out who cares, what they care about, and review that at some frequency. That's not hard. If you're going to do strategic planning, most companies will have at least an annual review, and they'll say, okay, go revisit that SWOT analysis and go revisit this list of interested parties. Make sure that you've still got everything listed about who cares, because you're going to have to take action to that, right? If you've got people that are impacted, potentially impacted, or impacting you with what they need, you need to be aware of it and make sure that you have some plan to respond, right? Okay, so that's pretty easy. That's 4.1 and 4.2. We've only got one more bit in the whole element 4. So then, now that we know what the issues might be from our SWOT, and then we know who cares and what they care about, then we move on to the scope of the quality management system. So whatever we're building, or whatever's already built and you're reviewing, or if you are an internal auditor, or If you are an outside auditor, a third-party auditor will come in and want to make sure that they understand the scope of this management system. Why does it exist, and what boundaries does it have around it? Like, what does it apply to? So there are the requirements here to clarify what that is about. 4.3, determining the scope. The organization shall determine the boundaries and applicability of the quality management system to establish its scope. So it says we have to do this. The organization shall, so we shall determine. When determining the scope, the organization shall consider. So it's going to give you some guidance here. If you're going to figure out what your scope is and what your quality system applies to, you have to consider these three things. A, the external and internal issues referred to in 4.1, so it's sliding back. Make sure that your quality system applies to the external and internal issues. B, the requirements of relevant interested parties referred to in 4.2, so it's sliding right back to 4.2. We had that whole who's our parties that are interested and what are they interested in. Okay, so we got to think about that for our scope. And then the third thing is the products and services of the organization. So it needs to apply to our products and services as well. That's not that hard to figure out, right? Okay, and then it goes on to say the organization shall apply all the requirements of this international standard if they are applicable within the determined scope of its quality management system. So we do not get to have a cafe-style approach to these requirements. If they're applicable to the scope of the quality management system, they have to be applicable. They have to be included in the scope. There are a very limited number of things that you can exclude in terms of the requirements of this international standard. The most commonly excluded one would be design and development. There are a lot of companies out there that just don't do any design and development. They make to order. They follow their customer specifications or blueprints. They don't do any design. They don't do any development. They just make what they're told to make. So you might not have a design and development. You might have maybe an approval. It might go under understanding requirements more than design and development. So you might say, we are a manufacturer of chocolate chip cookies, and we make them to order for a specific company according to their recipe. We don't do any design and development. And that's what the scope of your management system would say. It would say it applies to everything that we do here, but we do not do design and development. So it says that the requirement is we have to apply all of it unless there's a dang good reason and absolutely doesn't apply to what we're doing. Okay? The scope of the organization's quality management system shall be available and be maintained as documented information. Okay, so this is the first thing that it's actually said. They want to see a document. So the other things I suggested that you document, because I don't know, it's just easier to have it and to make sure that you're monitoring and reviewing, because you're going to have to somehow at some point, if you want to be registered to the ISO 9001 standard, or if you want to call yourself compliant, you need to be able to demonstrate that you did those things that it says you shall do. Now, in some cases, you might not have to have a document, because you can say, I can demonstrate that, ask anybody and they know the answer, and it's sampled, it's, yep, that's what we did. I can absolutely demonstrate that we did that. But not where it says specifically the organization shall maintain it as documented information. That means you better show me a document, girl. So that's either a paper document, an electronic document, but it has got to be written down. So the scope will be written down. If you do a third-party assessment, if you go out to get certified to ISO 9001, it will be on your certificate that you're going to so proudly display. It's going to say, we are certifying compliance to this particular standard, ISO 9001, as it applies to the manufacture of chocolate chip cookies, excluding design and development, whatever. It's going to say exactly what you do, and it's going to be written down. And so you're going to write that down as well for yourself. And as you're introducing your quality system, you're going to want to say, this applies to all the things that we do wherever. I have a client that I'm working with right now that they have applied their management system to one portion of their business and not the other part. So it's a commercial construction company, and they do both large commercial construction and they do home services. So they've decided, this is new to us. They're doing it on their own, by the way. Their customers aren't demanding it, and their industry doesn't demand it. They just like the requirements and they want to comply with it. They want a management system that is going to give them the results that they're looking for. So anyway, they have determined initially that this management system is only going to apply to just the large commercial construction side of their business and is not yet applicable to the home services group. And then later they will bring that in, and then their scope will change. So that's about the scope. That's what has to be written down so that we know exactly what it is. The scope shall state the type of products and services covered and provide justification for any requirement of this international standard that the organization determines is not applicable to the scope of its quality management system. Again, you got to spell it out if there's any part of this that you think isn't applicable, and there's not very many that are going to actually pass muster. It's just like if it's an activity that you absolutely don't do, but pretty much all the other requirements you're going to do. If you're a business, these requirements are not coming out of left field. They're not crazy. They're not anything that a well-run business wouldn't typically do. You know, they're just not. And finally, conformity to this international standard may only be claimed if the requirements determined as not being applicable do not affect the organization's ability or responsibility to ensure the conformity of its product and services and the enhancement of customer satisfaction. So again, there are requirements there about what you can exclude and what you can't. You absolutely can't exclude anything that you say, well, we just don't do that. You can't not do that if it has the ability to impact your ability to provide conforming products and services. So that's not going to fly if you're thinking about excluding. So that is sections 4.1, 2, and 3. The next section is 4.4. That'll wrap up the entire thing. And I'm pushing that out as its own thing because it's talking about the whole management system and its processes. And I think we're going to talk about that PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, the process approach. I think that really deserves its own video. So I'm going to cover that, tackle that in another one. So until we get there, it's kind of exciting. Remember, now we've got our context figured out. We know why we exist and what we're here to do. We know what products and services we're trying to make. We know who our interested parties are and what they want from us. We now know what our management system is going to entail and what it's going to apply to. And now let's start building. So in the next one, we're going to start building our system. We're going to start identifying our processes, and oh, it's just going to get exciting. So until then, keep improving.